Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Benchwarmer Sports. In this video, we're going to go over some more draft prospects that I've been taking a look at. Some other prospects that I think the Browns should also be looking at. I know a lot of people here on social media, especially in the Browns community, have been talking a lot about some of these players. So I thought I'd give you guys my perspective, some of the other players that I've been looking at. I've already done one of these before, so I'll leave that down in the description. You guys can check out my previous video of some of the other draft prospects I was looking at. But I thought it was interesting to take a look at some other prospects. I know there's a lot of different people that have been wanting some other prospects, and they've been talking a lot in the recent days. So I thought it'd be interesting to give you guys my perspective and some other prospects that you guys may not have even learned about. Some of you guys do know who these guys are, but maybe some of these guys have been under your radar, and hopefully the Browns can be looking at some of these guys because I think there's a little bit of talent that's in these prospects I'm about to share with you guys. But without further ado, let's get into it. So, the past couple of days on Twitter, especially, I've been seeing a lot of different accounts, especially for the Browns related media accounts. A lot of guys have been high on this one particular guy from Cincinnati, this wide receiver named Tyler Scott. Uh, very interesting prospect to me. I watched a lot of his tape before I started here, and from what I could tell, this guy is essentially a pretty good deep route runner. A lot of Browns fans, especially on social media, have been very high on him. They've been talking a lot of praises about him, and from what I could gather, uh, this guy is pretty versatile. He can separate downfield pretty easily. He can make some pretty good catches. From what I could see on his tape, they had him sometimes lined up outside, sometimes lined up in the slot. So very versatile on where he lines up on the field. I think that's a plus for the Browns because we definitely need a wide receiver who's a slot wide receiver and some guy who can separate vertically. Tyler Scott can do that. And from what I could tell, some people have been comparing him to Tyler Lockett. Now, Tyler Lockett is one of the best slot receivers and one of the best deep threats in the game. And if he gives even a fraction of that, if the Browns, who desperately need a deep threat, some guy like Tyler Lockett, if Tyler Scott can produce at that level, I mean, the guy had, I think, 18 yards per catch or some ridiculous amount. He produced very well last year. Granted, he was going up against some, American Conference teams, but they're nothing to sneeze at. He's been on the team for a while. I definitely think he's somebody to look into at 42. I definitely think that you could probably get him in the third round. I think he's probably going to go no later than the third round. But he's definitely somebody who a lot of Browns fans have been talking about recently. Somebody who got put on my radar because of that. And I'm very intrigued by him. I don't know if I would take him at 42. I don't think I would. But if he's there in the third round, even the fourth, early fourth round, I think he's a quality candidate. He may not be my first choice, but I think he's a quality candidate, and the Browns should definitely look at Tyler Scott. Now, a lot of different defensive tackle candidates have been floating around there, floating around recently for the Browns as well. Another couple of guys who I want to talk about, who I did not mention in the previous video, or if I did, I mentioned them very briefly. Kalijah Cansey from Pitt, bit undersized for his position. He is about 6 foot, 285 pounds. He lacks the size of a quality defensive tackle, but he makes up for it in his explosiveness. He can get, he can just basically go through guys. He can find those little creases inside the offensive line, get some pressure. It's just that size is not typical for your defensive tackle. Uh, it just really depends on if the Browns want to spend another high round pick on an undersized defensive talent, because they did that with JOK as a linebacker. Granted, JOK is very, very good, but it just depends on if Jim Schwartz wants to you know get a guy who may have some explosiveness and can get some pressure. He's just a little bit undersized. It all depends on what Jim Schwartz does. I think he'll be there at 42. Um, I don't really see him going past the second round. I think if anything, if he probably will get picked up at the latest is the early third round if he even makes it that far. But he's another guy. The other person that I have been hearing a lot about recently as well is a local guy, and that's Zach Harrison out of Ohio State. Now, Zach Harrison, for all the Buckeyes fans out there, this dude's insanely athletic. He is so freaking athletic. Like you almost get frustrated watching him because he has the talent, he has the potential. It's just he's very inconsistent, and this is where I feel like some people, especially in the local media, the local Cleveland media, I've been hearing a lot of people talk about Zach Harrison. For me, I feel like Zach Harrison is a boomer bust prospect. I feel like he's either a guy that's going to make you so unbelievably frustrated because he's got all of like the physical, athletic, just perfect specimen. He just is not consistent, and he didn't really have that much of like a stat full uh, production, especially at Ohio State. He really underachieved in college, considering his stock in high school coming in Ohio State. But he did have a good year for his senior year. I just feel like I'm just worried that he's going to be a boomer bust prospect in the NFL. They have him as a third round projection. I feel like that may be a little bit too high. I feel like he could be a fourth rounder. I just feel like there's some teams that are going to be enthralled by his physicality to warrant that third round pick. It's just he's very inconsistent, and I think the Browns maybe could be tricked. No, I don't want to say tricked, but they could be enthralled with the idea of having a guy like Zach Harrison opposite Myles Garrett. But I just feel like he's a little bit too much of a wild card for the Browns at this point. You just don't know what you're going to get out of him. Is he going to, live up to his potential, or is he going to be, kind of a mediocre player? I don't know. I just feel like he's very frustrating to kind of predict or project. But I feel like third round pick, kind of a little bit of a reach for me. I feel like fourth rounder makes the most sense, or makes more sense for me. But a lot of people have been talking about Zach Harrison. I'm just thought I'd give you guys my thoughts about him. But there's also another guy, another local product another local guy who some people have been talking about a lot recently. That is Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. Now, he is a guy who I would be very interested in in looking at, especially later on in the fourth or fifth round. Very, very productive. He had 10 sacks, I think 14 or 15 tackles for losses. I mean, the guy produced at a really high level for Bowling Green last year. It could be a really good option at the opposite side for Myles. I don't think he's a guy that you could probably get in the. I think he's a reach in the third or fourth round. I feel like maybe early fifth round you can probably get him. I think that's probably where I'd be comfortable with. My only concern is that I feel like you're gonna have to probably make a decision if you do try and get him in the fourth round. You're probably gonna have to decide whether you want to get Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, who you guys know I'm really high on. I love Keanu Benton. I think he's gonna be a really good developmental player. I just feel like you may have to decide whether you're gonna want to get Carl Brooks or Keanu Benton, and that is a dilemma that I do not want to be in. Hopefully, I'm just making it up in my head, but I'd be very worried if that's the case. I love Keanu Benton as a prospect. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. He showed out in his Senior Bowl. Carl Brooks, I think, is another guy who has a tremendous upside, and I don't really think you can go wrong with Carl Brooks, especially if you get him later on in the later on in the draft, maybe a late day 2, early day 3 pick. I think that's where he's most comfortable. I think that's where I'd be more comfortable with picking him in the draft. But another guy who I'm kind of interested in, coming in from LSU, he's a guy who's already got a brother in the NFL. Azeez Ojelari plays for the New York Giants, and that is going to be BJ Ojelari from LSU. I really am intrigued with this guy because this dude is a really good pass rusher. And if you guys have seen my other video when I detailed, Jim Schwartz and what he brings to the Browns, I'll leave that also in the description as well to my video about Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is basically his entire identity for his defense is to get to the quarterback. And that is what BJ Ojelari does. He is a really good pass rusher. I feel like he can be a really good, maybe a developmental guy. You could probably make him a rotational player and then slide him on in as a starter. But I really like this guy. He's a bit inconsistent sometimes. Can get a little bit hesitant at times too, and can kind of mess up his rhythm and mess up the pressure getting to the quarterback. But he's a really, really good pass rusher. I think they have him as a 4th round, maybe a 5th round grade. If you can get him at that spot, I would be really happy with that too. I feel like he's not being talked about enough. He's a guy who I would be, interested in if I'm the Browns, if I'm Andrew Berry, because Jim Schwartz loves guys who can get to the quarterback. And like I said, remember when I said his motto, what he said, if he can stop the run while also getting to the quarterback, that is perfect for him as well. So I would keep my eye on BJ Ojelari as well. But there's also another receiver who I kind of have not heard that much about, I've seen a little bit of people, a few people talking about, and that is Rasheed Rice from SMU. Now, he is very, very, very good at, getting the ball. 6'3", 200 pounds, very, very tall for a receiver. The good thing about him is that he can make some catches. He is really good at making spectacular catches in traffic. He can be put in the slot, maybe line up outside. He can do both. The only problem is that he does have a history of drops, especially, the easier passes or the easier looking passes. He occasionally drops them sometimes. Not that much of an expansive route tree, according to the Draft Network. They have him, around a 3rd round grade. I kind of feel like he's another option at this spot. Personally, I'm not that high on him. I think the size is really good. But if I had to choose between Tyler Scott, Marvin Mims, or him, if I had to cut one of them, I'd probably cut Rasheed Rice. I feel like Tyler Scott and Marvin Mims are probably the two that I would pick. And you guys know I'm really high on Marvin Mims. I've said this for a while now. Marvin Mims he's probably my guy. If you don't get a receiver at 42, I'm getting Marvin Mims in the 4th round or the 3rd round. I just feel like he is absolutely insane. He's averaged 20 yards per catch. I think he's really good. But there's also another guy who I am very, very, very interested in seeing how Browns fans react to him. Okay, and that, hear me out here for a second. Okay, I just want Browns fans to hear me out here for a second. Jacoby Brissett may be leaving after this year. Okay, he may be gone. He may be going to some other team to potentially start, okay? And I think everybody should be prepared for that to happen. He could sign back with the Browns if nobody else wants to offer him a starting job. He could come back as, as a starter or as a backup to Deshaun. Josh Dobbs, went back. He was on our practice squad, third string quarterback. Ended the season with Tennessee taking over for Ryan Tannehill for a couple of weeks. But if the Browns need another quarterback, hear me out. I know drafting another quarterback, I know that you may turn off the video already, but I feel like there could be a guy later on, not saying in the early round, but later on, potentially day 3 pick. I feel like this kid can be a very solid developmental player who can run the same type of system that the Browns are probably going to try and run with Deshaun. I feel like this guy can work as a 6th round pick if the Browns do want to get a backup quarterback and maybe want to look towards the future if Deshaun, has to have a backup, or if Jacoby Brissett doesn't come in, if you don't sign another guy. And that is Max Duggan from TCU. Max Duggan from TCU. Yes, I am talking about the guy who went to the national championship game, who, for all intents and purposes, was really, really good for the college football playoff, led TCU, back to relevance for, one of the first times since, like, Andy Dalton and AJ Green, or not AJ Green, like Andy Dalton was at that place. But, I think he's a really good, interesting prospect for a backup quarterback. Not like 2nd string, but like a 3rd string quarterback. I'm not saying like he should be behind Deshaun Watson, and if he goes down, then Max Duggan has to go in. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that Max Duggan has had the same type of system. He's been in the same system that Deshaun Watson is going to be playing in. He's an RPO system. He's very athletic. He's 6'3", 6'2". I mean, he's got the size of a good quarterback. He can make plays with his legs. He can make plays downfield. He can scramble, do all that stuff. The only thing is that he's inconsistently accurate. He kind of makes some boneheaded decisions sometimes, has a little bit of trouble reading coverages. But the thing is that you don't need to play him at day 1 like you had to do with Baker, or like you had to do with, fucking Brandon Weeden or anything like that, okay? You don't need to play him day 1, and that's the perfect thing to have as an organization, is that you do not need this quarterback to play day 1. You don't need a guy like Cody Kessler, okay? This guy, I feel like, can be a pretty good wild card pick for the Browns for a backup. If they need a backup, if they need a 3rd stringer, I feel like Max Duggan is a really interesting prospect to look at. I'm not saying you should definitely get him, but if they need a backup quarterback, a 3rd stringer quarterback, if you need some guy to just learn the system, just develop in the system, he's going to be in the same type of system he ran in TCU with an RPO offense. Deshaun Watson is another running quarterback who can do that. I feel like Max Duggan, a very interesting prospect for the Browns to think about if they need to get another quarterback. Not to start, but to sit for a couple of years, maybe even longer. If Deshaun Watson goes down, Max Duggan can go in. He runs the same type of offense. He knows he can do the same types of things. I feel like he's a really interesting prospect for the Browns to look at. And I feel like those are the rest of the prospects that I've looked at that make, some sense for me for the Browns to draft. I feel like these guys and the guys who I talked about in my previous videos, I feel like they're all really, really solid picks. Some wild cards here and there. I feel like Brandon Joseph he's jumped up in his draft stock. The safety from Notre Dame, who I talked about last time. Keanu Benton has definitely jumped up in draft stock since his Senior Bowl. He absolutely dominated and showed out there. He's definitely jumped up in my draft stock since I talked about him in my previous video. I feel like the guys who I've talked about in these two videos, the first draft video and the second draft video, which I've just done today, I feel like these guys are really interesting players to watch. Um, I definitely think that the Browns should definitely look at these guys and make a consensus opinion on some of these guys. I feel like most of these players who I mentioned today, they're not the guys you want to get at 42. Uh, I'd say maybe Tyler Scott he's a reach there, but I've seen some people try and draft him at 42. I don't think he's gonna be. I don't think you need to do it that early. I think he'll be there at like pick 98, which is what we have. I feel like he'll be there if you don't want to draft a receiver at 42. Personally, I think Marvin Mims or him are really good picks for those two receptions or two receivers if you don't want to go with a receiver at 42. But I feel like most of these guys who I've talked about today are guys who are day 2, day 3 picks. The guys who I talked about are probably your first pick, but I just feel like for the time being, these guys are pretty solid late day 2, early day 3 picks. Max Duggan is probably the wild card of that. I think that's just a personal pick for me. I think if you do need a quarterback, Max Duggan is there. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it for the second edition of the draft prospects that I've been looking at. If you guys have any more prospects that you want me to look at, put them down in the description of the video or in the comment section, excuse me. And let me know what other prospects you guys are looking at. Like the video, and if you are new, subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're slowly but surely getting there. We're at 527 right now. So if you guys like this type of content, like the NFL, or if you're Browns fans and you just like the Cleveland Browns, I just hit that subscribe button. We're going to be doing a lot more content with the Browns, with the NFL. We'll be starting doing some more NBA content. I know I've been slacking off the last couple of months with that, with the playoffs coming around. And the MLB is coming back here in just about a month and a half. So a lot of stuff is going on right now with the world of sports. Be lucky to have you guys join the community and get us to 1,000 subscribers. But I've taken up too much of your time, and I'll see you guys all in another video. Take care.